Shadiversity.
Greetings, I'm Shad, and many of my viewers are aspiring writers, and because this is a field, an area that I've done a lot of study and practice on over the years, because I myself am an aspiring writer, I saw fit that there might be a way in which I can help those viewers of mine who are undertaking the same wonderful quest that I am on, because I've learned a thing or two, and if I can help people learn the tricks that I have learned a bit quicker than I did, well then it's all worth it. And so I've invited my viewers to send in some of their writing samples to me, and I will give them feedback on it. Now, there are some important things that I need to say before we begin. And the first thing is that what these guys have done is very brave, okay? They're putting up their work to be ripped apart without mercy, because when I go, revision, frame of mind, I'm brutal, okay? But I'm as brutal with my own work as I will be on theirs. In fact, that's why I uploaded a video where I review one of my earliest pieces of writing before I did this, so you can see the standard I hold to myself. The next thing that I need to say is that in revision, there are a lot of things that come down to personal preference. So when I say, look, this hasn't grabbed me, like if the first line or something like that, I'm just not interested in what's happening, I have fairly specific likes and dislikes. So what appeals to me might not appeal to someone else, and what doesn't appeal to me might appeal to someone else. So you got to take that in context as well. If I do end up really ripping one of these pieces of writing apart, please don't be discouraged by it, okay? This is the journey that every writer goes along. I've been there as well. And I'm not saying I'm perfect either, but I'd like to think I've gotten my writing to an acceptable level. And some of the validation I have in that is that I've had requests to see my full manuscripts and stuff like that when I've sent in writing samples to literary agents. And this is how the literary agents will be just as brutal as I will be in this revision process. And if my writing is able to pass their standards, I think that gives me some measure of credibility to be able to point out a good sentence and a bad one. And just to let you know, even right now, I'm waiting for a response from a literary agent who's requested some sample pieces of my writing as well. Oh, and there's a good agent too, like one of the best agents in the industry. Good. Huge track record, bestsellers under his belt, so fingers crossed, hey? Now, I'm sorry if I'm not going to be reviewing some of the samples you sent in to me. I received a lot when I announced it. It was just a comment below one of my videos saying, hey, I think this would be a good idea. But depending on how you guys like this video right here, I might do more. So you still might have a chance for me to give your stuff a review. Now, one of the kind of guides that I'll be going when reviewing this is the quality of the very first sentence and first paragraph. It's the most crucial part of the book. And because of that, I've made a whole video that will be uploaded in conjunction with this one on how to start a book, because I've already having skimmed over some of the submission examples, I've noticed a lot of them missing the most important part of starting a book. And so to save me rehashing that information all the time in this video, I made a separate one that I encourage you to go watch before even watching this one right now. So this piece of writing is part 1 of A Traveller in Imperial Lands, chapter 1, and it's a prelude. And it begins thus. The nights of Baldurham are quiet, more so in the summer than in the spring, but they are very quiet. All right, we have run into an issue already. Aside from that, it's incorrect formatting, but I've mentioned that in my other video. So most of these writing samples are not properly formatted from the offset. So that's the first thing you guys fix up, formatting, okay? What that is, go watch my other video and I explain it. But the first problem we run into is irrelevant information, also not interesting. The nights of Baldurham are quiet. Okay, so that can start off if there's a good proposition or implication afterwards, but we don't need to know that they're more quiet in the summer than the spring. Now, that's relevant information right now. We don't need to know that. We need to know the things that will interest us, hook us in, and get the story going. And by making that distinction, you've then needed to repeat yourself. And so not only is there irrelevant information, there's a repetition of a bit of information that was already beginning, which has bogged down the flow of the sentence, because you don't want to repeat yourself, because the repetition here is, but they are very quiet. Next sentence. You'd expect to find the usual crackle of a village tussling in their sleep. Not sold on the descriptive words used there, but it's not like it doesn't break the sentence or anything. But there, in that rustic and peaceful town, all you hear is the nocturnal birds and the trees dancing in the wind. in any of the many green patches scattered throughout the twisty imperial roads. And that's the first paragraph. Okay, merciless reviewing hat now. If this was a piece of writing sent to a literary agent, I'd be very confident that would be rejected right here, and they probably would have stopped reading after the first sentence. That's how ruthless they need to be, because they get so many samples. So unless something is on the money, done right, and gets their interests, they're not going to read more. Why wouldn't they read more? Well, all that has been established here is that there's a town, very quiet, and mentioning some of the things that you actually might hear, even though it is quiet. And so, going on, it is, however, a trading centre at heart, like so many other towns of the eastern regions. Okay, so we're getting into info dump territory here. Background information of the town. So I want to keep scanning until I find something interesting about this town that should have been used as the hook for the beginning of this story. All right, so the hook of this first paragraph is a very big miss. Essentially, you're trying to make the hook the introduction of the main character. That's not a hook, that's essential information for the story. So right now, I really don't know what the story is or anything about it. The town was introduced, that should be shown in the flow of the story, the interaction of the characters and stuff like that. And for a reader, what are they going to find interesting about this town? Because you've described it as a fairly, in like stock standard-ish fantasy kind of town that's quiet. So what you do now, go back, revise, and rewrite, okay? I've done it, everyone goes through this journey, so thank you for sending this piece to me to review, and I hope everyone who watches this will appreciate what these guys are doing, because like I said, it's very brave, all right? They're stepping out on the ledge, exposing their own work for people's review and potential even criticism. Criticism can be constructive, especially when it's not malicious, and there's nothing, malicious in what I'm saying here. This is just to try and help you out as a writer. What I will say, apart from some of the repetition in the first stuff, it seems like you are avoiding useless adverbs, which is good. That's actually a weakness that I have, because in my normal language, I adverb the hell out of the way I speak all the time. Like, really, I use the word really a lot, and very and stuff. In terms of just adverbs in general, you will find that you can cut most of them unless they're actually adding or adding something to a sentence in terms of its descriptive value, or restructuring it in some way. A classic example of when you should just totally cull adverbs is when you're using them in the sense of he was very angry. Instead of saying very angry, get rid of both of those and use furious. He was furious, okay? So when you can increase the emphasis of a certain description by just using a better word than adding an adverb, do it in all instances, okay? So you can go through your manuscript and look for every instances of your use of the word, say, really or very, and find that you can cut most of it, because oftentimes it doesn't actually add anything really to the sentence itself. And then you can also have a look at the word that. Eric caught the ball that bounced towards him. Or you could just say, Eric caught the ball bouncing towards him. So replace that bounced with bouncing. And you can use present tense structure in this sentence that is technically written in the past tense, because it's what is immediate and present to the viewpoint character. All right, moving on to the next. The Vatnageda? I hope this isn't a real word that I've just never heard before and therefore don't know how to pronounce, and I'm looking like an idiot. It sounds like a made-up word, maybe, I don't know, place name or something important in the book setting. The fisherman laid on the bed and writhed in agony. All right, we have a good hook here, okay? Someone's writhing in agony. Why? It's establishing something that would make us want to figure out what's happening next. In terms of the sentence structure itself, it could be made more efficient by having it worded, the fisherman laid on the bed writhing in agony, okay? Because this is what I was just saying literally just before, is that in any given scene, especially like a scene that is written in past tense, from the perspective of the scene itself, even though it's in the past from our own perspective, from the scene's perspective, it will have a past, present, and future. And so this is where we get into some important elements of what perspective is. For instance, if you're describing something that happened in the past to the viewpoint character, and though the viewpoint character is in the past to us, to the viewpoint character, he is in their present, and so the stuff that has already happened from either the viewpoint character or where the scene is in that point in time, that's called past perfect, where you write something that has already transpired from the whatever you are right now. And when you are describing things that are happening either to the viewpoint character or happening right then within the scene, you can use present certain descriptive structures, like here. Instead of "and writhed," you can write "writhing." And what this does, it makes the sentence feel immediate. If you watch my video where I'm critiquing my own work, and you'll notice I was writing it in present tense originally, I was saying that you can actually make past tense sound very immediate as present tense, which is why present tense really isn't needed in terms of writing a story at all. And this is one of the ways you go about doing it, because by replacing "and writhed" with "writhing," you are making this sentence sound so much more immediate, like it's happening right now. Okay, so we shall continue. Doctors and surgeons struggled to hold him down as he twisted and flailed against their grasp. The second sentence, great. I don't see a thing wrong with that. Next sentence. Finally, they were able to inject and sedate him. Trying to be efficient again in sentence structure, you don't really need to say inject and sedate him because it's kind of implied. When you say they were able to sedate him, generally in terms of a situation like this, the common person will understand that sedating generally means an injection of a needle, but it's also not entirely relevant. What's relevant is that he is getting sedated. So the reader can fill in the gaps here. You don't need to go into detail about everything, and you could have just said, finally they sedated him. But the next sentence is important because the burning, okay? This is actually something significant to what's going on, and it also is another hook. So this is significant, and I think it would be better to combine that part with the previous sentence, even though it's in the same sentence. And you could be a bit more expressive here. He screamed constantly about the burning until the doctors were able to sedate him. So just make it a bit more efficient, and instead of having you have two propositions of the sentence. He is sedated and then is screaming. Combine those things and I think it will work better. The surgeons got out their instruments. Again, about efficient sentence. Got out could be combined into retrieved. The surgeons retrieved their instruments. And I don't think you need a comma between instruments and. You could just keep it all flowing quickly. But okay, apart from some gripes about certain sentence structure and stuff like that, the actual what's happening in this paragraph is a hook, in my opinion, and can introduce a story. Would a literary agent still take it on? This is very hard for me to say because not much else is really established. They might keep reading, but I wouldn't say they'd be sold on it. Having said that though, the sentence things that we just picked out, that might be enough for it to be rejected just there because some agents are cutthroat. So what happens next, I'm not completely sold on, but I can see what's happening here because now we switch to what seems to be a viewpoint character, Dr. Andrew Carter, and we're in a completely different scene to what was just happening. Okay, so I haven't read in detail the next scene because a lot of it was he is getting a room in a hotel and I was looking for the hook, what's supposed to be interesting here, and I was at the very almost-ish bottom of this page, and this would still be around the second page. If in proper formatting, you would be on the second to third page in proper formatting with double-spaced lines, and so I don't think an agent would have read this far because nothing is too interesting about him getting a room, and the hook is at the very end. Closing and locking the door behind him, it was time to learn more about these attacks. That's the hook right there, okay? That needs to be brought up far sooner in what's happening. Maybe even replace the first paragraph with Dr. Andrew Carter arrived in this strange whatever town to learn more about the strange attacks that were happening or something like that. That alone right there is a hook and far more interesting in what was several pages of just stuff happening. You can get to the stuff happening, but if there's not a good enough hook, there's no guarantee an agent or even readers will have read so long before they get to it. So use the hook far earlier on, and then if you have their interest, you can get to he arrives at a hotel or whatnot and everything, and let the story flow as normal. Thank you for submitting your stuff, mate. I really do appreciate it. I'm going to be a bit more cutthroat now to try and get through some more submissions by the end of this video. So sorry that I won't be spending as much time on these next ones, because I really wanted to show what a deep sentence by sentence kind of review was in the previous. Now, yeah, I'll be spending less time, and let's go. Chronicles of Xandrian. Pronunciation. Interesting. So we have kind of an introduction paragraph, which is separate to the prologue and separate to what I'm assuming will be the first chapter. And this is a big prologue. Nothing wrong with a huge prologue. I think Brandon Sanderson has a prologue that's just massive in one of his books, like crazy big. But it's hard because with a prologue this big, I really do need to judge on how the prologue begins with the same kind of cutthroat tactics of how I judge a first chapter, because obviously with a prologue this big, it's important to the story. But first off, this strange kind of statement. It is the third age and a force as old as time is returning. All right, in my opinion, the third age is irrelevant right now because we have no point of reference. What's the third age to us if we don't know? Yeah, so that's useless, but a force as old as time is returning. Again, I'm not sure how relevant it is, because is the force good? Is the force bad? It's just kind of confusing. But more context is given in the next lines. Kingdoms are about to be shaken by forces of both light and darkness. After an age of peace, comma, should be a comma there, war will return upon the shoulders of enemies from old. Enemies from old. Okay, you already just said enemies of old, so this next enemies of old is kind of redundant. Though dead or in deep hiding will now... So instead of repetition, because I know you need an attribution to what you're referring to, who's dead then. So enemies of old. These enemies, though dead or in deep hiding, will now be returning under their master and begin present tense. Bit jarring, or like in my opinion, just avoid present tense. Past tense works better. And I explained why in many ways, and you can make it sound immediate and stuff like that. Under their master and begin to rampage across the lands. And all right, so an agent I don't think would get past here. In fact, they might not even get past the first line. They would just go past, confusing, tense issues, and some of the word structure is a bit wonky. And you have to also understand this isn't particularly original, but you're starting a story with saying something bad is returning, as said mostly every fantasy that has ever been written. Lord of the Rings, just classic example of... Now, things become standards because they're good. I'm not saying don't do it, just be aware that if you're trying to submit to a flooded market, when this is done before, what's making your thing stand out? You're starting with something bad is returning. Okay, I don't think that would be enough to interest an agent or a publisher to keep reading. Prologue. It was the late second age, 2995 to be exact, and they would stop reading and reject it just from there on. You're starting with an info dump background. Where's the hook? What's interesting us? Why is this enjoyable for us to read over something else? Yeah, and if you just keep reading, when the earth trembled and mountains shook as an enemy of old returned to the world's face. So this is already establishing what was in that small paragraph, which makes the small paragraph there completely redundant. Get rid of it completely. But still, again, the issues of old enemy returning. Nothing particularly new or too interesting about that. Go back, revise, and rewrite. Moving on to the next. Flying squirrels are the most popular squirrels in Ohio. Most people don't know this because flying squirrels are nocturnal, only foraging at night. They also... I faded out. I'll know what to do about it when we get there. This is not a common reaction. I'm telling you it's supposed to take days to. I was back in for a moment, but... ... Ash cart his coding. Mumbled shouting and confusion. Try it again. See it too. This time I'm floating over me and the doctors and nurses are trying to get me going again. I can clearly see the problem. There's a squirrel thingy stuck to my head and it's not letting go of me. It needs to go for me to get better and it simply won't go. Awkward wording. I realize in some small part of my brain that I'm likely delusional at this point, but that part gets washed away by the struggle. I'm floating me, trying to get the squirrel off of me. No need to specify you. You've already proposed that a squirrel is on your head, and so, when you say trying to get the squirrel off, we already know it's going to be off your head, so you don't need to state off of me. Just to get the squirrel off. But she's, don't ask me how I know, just do it. When you have a psychotic delusion of your own. Okay, so I don't generally see things in brackets in books. You can, better to put kind of off, comments like that between like hyphens, just dash, then dash, then brackets. Don't ask me how I know, I just do. When you have a psychotic delusion of your own, you can change it if you like. Okay, so the comment is too jarring in the structure of the sentence. It should be, but she's not having any of it. Then hyphen, don't ask me how I know, I just do. When you have it, okay, this is actually pretty good, okay? See how I've kept going? I like the structure of how this is introduced. First of all, the very first line is a hook in and of itself because it's weird, interesting, slightly humorous. Flying squirrels are the most popular squirrels in Ohio. So I think that's a good line to begin a book. And it's in quotation marks. So because someone is speaking, that made me want to keep reading to say, who's speaking? What's the context of this weird sentence? And then dash, I faded out. That was on the line for me, but I kept reading. So you've achieved what you wanted to, what you should be trying to achieve at the beginning of the book. So full points, all right? That's what you want. Well done. And it also creates an interesting a series of events where someone is fading in and out of consciousness, which is interesting as well. So this is a hook by what is actually happening in the scene. It's not the hook in narration, it's just what's happening. And like I've started a book like this as well, starting with dialogue. Sometimes just go right into the scene of action, what's happening, and have someone speak. And if what they're speaking is interesting, stuff like that, perfect way to start off. And then we get some characterization in the first person past tense narration, which is, don't ask me how I know, I just do. When you have a psychotic delusion of your own, you can change it if you like. So it's snappy, it has character, personality, and that's what you want, especially in first person narration like this. You want characterization in the narration because that's what keeps you reading. And I haven't seen any major red flags in the sentence structures, overuses of adverbs and things like that. And apart from some of the wonky ways of writing things that I just mentioned as I was reading through, most of it is pretty good. I would just be cautious about putting things in brackets. That's not usually done. As to would an agent pick it up, I have no idea, but in my opinion, I think it has enough to cause me or an agent to keep reading. And it seems just on a cursory glance, the writing, though not perfect, no writing is, it is good enough as well. No major red flags. So again, good stuff, okay? Thank you to you guys who sent me stuff. I have heaps more, so perhaps I will make another video. But as to the actual submissions I did review in this video, I thank you guys for sending them, and I hope everyone who watches this will share their appreciation to these guys who are brave enough to let their writing be reviewed by myself on such an open platform where everyone in the world can now see it. I hope it's been helpful. That's been the whole intention of this video, to help you guys out in any way that I can. Thank you for watching. I hope you've enjoyed, and I hope to see you again. Until that time, farewell.